Okay, we're back. I'll just unpause that, and we're going to continue on filling this reactor with the tier 3 supercapacitor. And now that I'm on my tier 3, this is going to be the last tier of power cells that I'm actually going to be doing with this kind of layout. From this point on, my next thing that I'm going to be adding is going to be a indirect heat build. So this is a direct heat build because the vents are directly touching my cells, whereas the next thing we're going to be doing is going to be where the cells aren't directly touching the vents, and the way we're going to do that is with outlets. And in order for us to do our outlets, normally, okay, so if I look here, if I look up here, I can see a number 4. So this has been leveled up to level 4. What I need to do is level this guy up to level 4 as well. And what that's going to do is whatever value for my vents. So I'm going to have an outlet surrounded by 4 vents. And if, let's say if each vent is 10, can hold 10 heat, that would give me a combined of 40 for those 4 of them. What I want is my outlet to be just slightly higher. So for my 4 vents, I have an output of 40. What I want is the outlet to be at about 40.1, 40.2. So that way I'll use my vents to calculate how much heat I can actually put into my system. So in order to do that, I need to make sure that the level up here is the same for both of them. So I have 4 and 4, and the same with these guys here. So I'm going to put this up to 3, 3 and 3, and I'm actually going to go up to level 4, bring this to level 5, and let's see how much. 1 billion. So I'm going to get that one up, and now I need another billion to get that other one. And we have a depleted cell, so I'll just replace that. Let me see how much the auto replace. So I need 4.5 billion for that. So I'm not going to get that yet. I'm going to wait until I get to my next build. But I do have enough for this guy here. So now this is level 5, this is level 5, this is level 5, this is level 5. And let me check on something. 10 billion, I'm not going to get that yet. I can get that for 100 million. And I can get that for 78 million. Okay, so now if I go to my heat tab, and if I hover over this guy here, the tier 4 or the wondrous heat vent, I can see that each of them is going to cost me 781 million. I want 4 of them, which is, let's just round it up so it costs $1 billion each. So I need 4 billion for my vents, and then I need another billion for the outlet. So I need 5 billion for that. So I need about, let's say, 6 or 7 billion, and I can go on to the next build. So I'm just going to save up 6 or 7 billion and move on. I'm just going to replace cells as they need it. How much is my next upgrade? Okay, this is only 2.5 billion, so I'm actually going to get this now. Do I want it? Yeah, I'm going to get it. Why not? It's going to take a little bit longer, but I'll be able to make more cash in the long run. So like I said, as these cells become depleted, I'm just going to replace them until I get, I think, 6 billion. So once this hits 6 billion, I'm just going to completely demolish this whole reactor. So up until this point, I can just easily calculate how much heat I can hold within my vents just by, I got 2 vents, so I just add the 2 of them together, and that tells me how much heat I can put in between them. But from this point on, what I'm going to want to have is a calculator, or at the very least, a piece of paper and a pen. but a calculator is going to be much easier, obviously. So we got 6 billion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift and right click on these power cells. That removes them. I'm going to do that on the reflectors, the capacitors, and the vents. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 4 of these guys, and this is what we call an array. So I have 4 vents surrounding a outlet. Okay, so this is an array. I'm going to add in a couple of capacitors of the lower tier, and I'm going to leave some space for another array right there, another array right there, another array there, and another one there. So I can, in total, I'll have 6 arrays on this one row. But for now, because I have those capacitors in there and I have my vents, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over, and I'll make sure that you can see it. So I'm going to hover over this vent, and it'll show me a value of 35.764. So I'm going to put that into my calculator. 35.764. I don't care that it's in millions. I don't care if it's in billions, because I'm going to know that. It's not going to be that hard for me to figure out what it is. Okay, so if I take that, so I have this 35.764, and I multiply it by the number of vents that I have, which in this case is 4. So my 35.764 times 4 equals a total heat of 143.056 million. So I'm going to go in here. First thing I'm going to do before I start adding my cells is I'm going to go to Options, and I'm going to hit Export. So that way, if I blow up my reactor, all I have to do is go back to Options and hit Import, and no harm, no foul. I'm going to take my thorium cells, and I'm just going to start adding them. And now what I need to do is watch this number right here. Because I'm using a indirect build, this is where my heat, I can see how much heat I have. So I'm just going to start going across. Now, I said before that when you put cells together, they increase the amount of power and heat that each cell puts out. I believe it's 4 for quads, but it doesn't really matter how much it increases it. Just know that putting cells beside each other is going to increase their heat. And just bear that in mind. So if I look here, if I look at this number right here, I can see that it's 355K. If I look at this one here, it's 592K. So obviously this cell is producing a lot more power than this one. Likewise with the heat, which will be right up here, the heat is 266K, whereas this one here is 740K. So this heat is a lot higher than this. So I have to bear that in mind. So by bunching them together like this, I can get a lot more heat and power out of my reactor in a lot less space. So I'm up to 40 million. 42 million, and I'm just going to keep adding. I'm up to 65 million. I'm going to replace one of these capacitors with the next tier. Okay, and I'm going to continue adding. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to Options, Export, and then I'm going to add in another row. So I'm up to 92 million of a max of 143. I'm going to add in another row. I'm going to go Options, Export, and I'm going to add some more. $42. Okay, I'm pretty close to my max, so I'm going to leave it at that. Now I remember that I need 10 billion to upgrade the chronometer, so I'm going to do that right now. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add infinite thorium, which is, I forget, let's say 5 billion, 4.5, 5 billion. Alright, there we go. I'm going to increase my capacity for my capacitor since I have some extra cash. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save up and add another array. So I got my vents, I'm going to add in that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the value up here again, so which is 36.101, and I'm going to multiply that by the number of vents that I have, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 vents, so I take that number and multiply it by 8, which gives me a new max output of 288 million. So I can go back, I'm going to hit export, and I can add a bunch more thorium to get me close to that 288. I'm getting close to the amount, so I'm going to go to options and hit export, and then continue on. Okay, well, that's good enough for now. I'm going to go ahead and add in a bunch more arrays. I'm just going to fill out this bottom row with arrays. So there's all the vents, and now the outlets in between them. And I'm going to recalculate. Now I know from experience that I have 6 arrays. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arrays, and each of them has 4 vents, which gives me a total of 24 vents. So I'm going to take that 24, put it in my calculator, 24, and I'm going to multiply that by the output for each of the vents, which is 36. So I have 24 times 36.101 gives me a max heat output of 866 million. So I can go ahead and add in another row of thorium cells. And as a buffer between my arrays and capacitors and the cells, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a row of reflectors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check how much for the next upgrade. So remember, I want to upgrade both of these together. If I can only do, let's say if I can only do one right now, and then in 2 minutes I can do the other, it's better to do this bottom one here, because if I did this upper one and then I went back and I tried to calculate my max heat output by using my vents, what I'm actually going to have is my vents are going to be greater than the amount of heat that they can actually absorb, because the outlet isn't actually putting that much heat into them. So what I can end up doing is melting down my reactor. So if I'm using my vents to calculate my max heat, what I should do, if I'm going to upgrade one of these at a time, do the bottom one first, because then my vents are still going to be valid to get my calculations from. Before I do my next calculation, though, I need 25 billion. I'm going to get that next upgrade first. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all these tier 3 capacitors with tier 4 capacitors, because when I add in the tier 4 capacitor, it's going to actually increase the venting. So if I look, this is up here, this is 43.3 million. If I add in one of these guys, it brings it up to 43.7. If I add another, 44.1. So you can see adding these capacitors is actually increasing the max amount of heat that I can deal with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save up 25 billion to upgrade this guy, and then I'm going to end this video. We're starting to get to the point where it's going to slow down. Okay, there's 25 billion. I'm going to upgrade the thorium. And I have some cash left over, so it's only going to cost me $1 billion, so I'm going to upgrade this. Alright, and that is it. I will see you on the next part.